Lay, 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 lay. Ah, yeah, yeah, la, 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 la. See, I wanted to see if I'm really sitting in front of Moroccans or not. I've been to a lot of Hillula of Baba Sali, but I'm looking for Diana. I want to know who I'm standing in front of, because I need to understand the direction that I'm going. Rabotai, I got on JetFlu 1601 yesterday in JFK on an 8-hour flight that was supposed to be only 2.5 hours. I figured if I knew that in advance, I would have added another hour or two and went straight to Jerusalem. But instead, I came here to Miami because I'm a rabbi of a Syrian Lebanese shul in Brooklyn, 150 couples, families. But tonight, the night of Baba Sali, I wanted to spend it with our people. I take a tremendous pride in where we came from. I take a tremendous pride in the families that we come from. I come from the Windy City. No, not Chicago. I'm talking about Essaouira, Mugador. That's where our family comes from. Originally from Dibda. My grandfather, the great-grandfather, the one that I'm named after, was the Av Bedin in Casablanca, Rabbi David Bensoussan. And I want to tell you a story that took place with Baba Sali in Casablanca. You see, the great rabbi would go from city to city, and he would give chizuk to the people from town to town. He came to Casablanca one Shabbat, and his minhag was that he would stay by the house of the rabbi. It turns out that he stayed by the house of my great-grandfather for that Shabbat, Rabbi Chaim. When my grandmother heard that the great Baba Sali is by her father's house, she picked up from Essaouira and she traveled to Casablanca to spend that Shabbat with the great Tzaddik, the Baba Sali. Now you could imagine, everybody in town was waiting for this moment. And the minhag was that Friday night, after the meal, everybody would come over to the house of the rabbi where Baba Sali was saying to get birachot. Baba Sali, he would have the arak, he would pour it, the mahya, he would pour it, he would give blessings. And they expected a lot of people. So my great-grandfather went out before Shabbat and he bought boxes and boxes and cases of bottles of mahya. And he was waiting for that night because he knew hundreds of people are showing up. My father at that time was only 9 years old. My father was that boy. You know, the little kid in the house that they get everybody to do things for, right? The one that we send them here, go get a chair and go. He was that kid. He was that age. His older brother already was, I'm on my way to Paris for university. You can't tell. And his younger brothers were too young. He was somewhere right there in the middle. And my father tells me, as he remembers the story, that his grandfather, my great-grandfather, called him, Jackie, Aziaina, go downstairs and bring up the boxes of mahya, bring up as many bottles, because the people are starting to come. That night, over 400 people came to the house. They were able to fit 50 in the dining room, another 40 or 50 in the living room. They had a sitting area in the Hatzer that they put another 50, 60 people. And they were waiting, mamash, they were waiting online just to get into Baba Sali, to get a little lahaim and a drink. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you are who I think you are, you know good and well that when we poured mahya for lahaim for somebody, we didn't have what the Ashkenazim have. In Europe, they came up with an invention. It's called a schnapps cup. Mandu schnapps cups. That's not our. When they poured you a glass of mahya, it was a glass, and they poured it to the top. So they start bringing out the glasses, hundreds of glasses. And my father tells me over, as a young boy, he's watching them bring out all these glasses, and they're filling the tables. And there, he goes down to the basement, and Baba Sali calls him back. And he tells him, Jackie, just give me one bottle. My father brings him the bottle, and he says, Rabbi, we have to bring more. He says, no, just one bottle. Baba Sali, as you all know what I'm about to tell you, but my father saw this with his eyes. That's the difference. He pulled out his handkerchief and wrapped it around the bottle well. And he began to pour. And he poured the first glass. And he poured the second glass. My father, as a 9-year-old boy, is looking up and he's watching. As he's pouring glass after glass. Do you remember the way your grandmother poured the tea? Do you remember the way she poured the tea with... Nah, you remember? She went up and down. You remember? Do you remember? Remember? On the handle there was Monsieur, whatever. No. And she poured up and down. You remember? Baba Sali was pouring the mahya up and down. Glass after glass. 5, 10, 15, 20 glasses. And my father looks at my great-grandfather and he says, what is this? And he turns to my grandfather and he says, should I get another bottle? My grandfather tells him, no, baraka, safe, waha, this is enough. This is enough. This is Baba Sali. He ended up pouring that night hundreds of glasses from that bottle. And then after they gave it out to everybody, and everybody came in the house and out the house and wished him l'chaim, and as they came around and they wished the rabbi l'chaim, he gave them an incredible beracha. It was at that point that Baba Sali turns and says, l'chaim to everyone. Rabotai, I want to try this. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam sha'akol Nihya bidvaro. The Chaim to everybody. Chaim to everybody. All the berachot, all the yeshuot, all the shidduchim, all the zivugim, all the shefa, and our children should grow up to be great tzaddikim that will follow in the heritage of their grandfathers. Baba Sali raised the glass and he said l'chaim, and the whole tzibur said l'chaim. And then he put the bottle down and the handkerchief dropped and the bottle was still filled to the top. And my father, a young boy, looks at Baba Sali and he says to him, you don't want to use our mahya? It's not good? Baba Sali said, La, mizien. So why don't you want to use it? Says Baba Sali, I don't want to take from anybody anything, so that I'll show that when you're connected to Hashem, you need nobody. Did you hear that? When you're connected to Abba, you need nobody. You need nothing. Once you're connected to Borei Olam and you have a relationship with Borei Olam and you live with Avinu Shebashamayim, Abba! Abba, I need your help. Abba, we need shidduchim. Abba, we need health. Abba, we need mazal, we need shefa, we need beracha. The moment that we understand where it comes from is the moment we realize how insignificant everybody else is. There is only one that matters. En od milevado. That's it. That's it. And everything else is a camouflage. And that's what Baba Sali stood for. He put the wrapping around the bottle to tell you, this is not about magic tricks. This is not about to show you something. This is about, I don't need anything from anyone because I have Him. And when I have Him, I have everything. And when we don't have Him, we have nothing. If we take home this message tonight, that we brought in honor to the memory of the man that we're honoring tonight. That's what a Hillula means. A Hillula means we're bringing a beautiful honor and paying homage to a great tzaddik that we came from. This is our family. These are our people. We have to stand up and remember who we came from to understand what to give down to the next generation. Because if you can tell your kid who you came from, one day he can tell his kid who he came from. Don't ever forget what I just told you. But if you can't tell your kid who he came from, he will never tell his child who he came from. We need to bring back the pride. We need to bring back the strength. Do you know who you came from? Do you know the people that walk the streets that our parents and grandparents grew up? Do you know we came from people that lived with a relationship with God minute to minute, moment to moment? Our grandmothers, when they cooked Friday, they used to talk to Borei Olam. I watched it with my eyes with my own grandmother. I watched it. When my grandmother Friday afternoon used to cook for Shabbat, I used to hear her talking in the kitchen. I said, Mama, who are you talking to? And she says to me, who am I talking to? Nabi Bestiali. Who am I talking to? I'm talking to Borei Olam. I said, but what does it have to do with the cooking? And she tells me, what does it have to do with the cooking? You want something good for Shabbat? I said, yeah. So would you stop disturbing our conversation? He's the ingredient. He's the ingredient. He's the ingredient. He's the ingredient that brings life and spice to everything in life. Everything else is nice. He is what counts. We come from parents and grandparents that constantly spoke to Borei Olam. They had a relationship, an emunah pshuta, and they were so proud from where they came. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you something. I'm allowed to say this because I'm getting on a flight Friday morning.
I came here on a Friday morning. It's fine. It works.
We have a weakness. We have incredible strength. Our hearts are unmatched. Our devotion and our emotion to Borei Olam is unmatched. We have children that are golden, magnificent, what they call in the Jewish world, Tayra Nishamot. That means Nishama Tehora, our kids. They were born with a certain emunah that was literally came out when they were born as an automatic in our children. But by us, we're very easygoing. Everything is fal, oto davar. Yeah, so it's not exactly this, so it's a little bit that. Our Misorah is being forgotten because we're not ready to stand up and fight for it. We need to bring back the pride to our children, to tell them who they came from, to tell them the families they came from, to tell them the stories. You know, I had an opportunity. I went to Israel with my son. I went to the city of Tzfat. I brought my son to the Bet Knesset of the Arizal HaKadosh. Do you know why? I took him to the Bet Knesset of Arizal HaKadosh because I told him, if not for one Moroccan rabbi, this Bet Knesset would never be open for anyone to pray in. Do you know that? Do you know that when Baba Sali came to Israel in 1921, at a very young age, he went to the city of Tzfat. Many people don't know this. He came to the city of Tzfat and he saw that the Bet Knesset of the Arizal was locked. He found out that the reason why it was locked is because there was something of a Kiddusha in it, that when people went in, they didn't come out. There was a famous story of two English reporters that heard about the Bet Knesset. They came from Europe. They insisted to go into the Bet Knesset. They found the guy with the key. They paid a lot of money. They went in and they never came out. So they locked the Bet Knesset. Nobody, for many years, was able to go into the Bet Knesset of the Arizal HaKadosh in the holy mystical city of Tzfat for many years, until Baba Sali showed up. Baba Sali came to the city of Tzfat. He found the Gabbai. The Gabbai probably had a beret on his head. And between me and you, he probably came from Meknes. Because most of the Gabbayim come from Meknes. He's wearing a beret. And as you walk up to him, he looks at you with one eye and says, Skuhua. He had the key. Baba Sali sent his shamosh. They found out who he was. And he said, Baba Sali wants the key to the Bet Knesset of Arizal HaKadosh. The man said, I'm not giving it. The last time people went in, they never came out. I'm not going to be chas v'shalom rotzeach. It's a death wish. If I give you the key, he's not going to survive. The shamosh says, no, you don't understand. This is the great Baba Sali. He's asking for the key. You give him the key. He says, I'm sorry, I'm not giving the key to anyone. He says, no, you don't understand. Baba Sali can open up the Bet Knesset of the Arizal for the entire Jewish people to one day have the opportunity to go into a place that they weren't able to go in and to pray there. Please, don't lose the opportunity. Give me the key. He says, if that's the case, on one condition. Do you remember the story the Gemara tells us about the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur on Bayit Sheni? They put a rope around his waist in case he doesn't make it out. So like this, they'll be able to tug him out. They used to give a little tug every now and then, just as a sign to see if he's still alive. And if he wouldn't tug back, they'd actually schlep him out. You remember that Gemara? Well, here is the story, circa 1921. Baba Sali is standing by the gates of the Arizal's Bet Knesset. And the only way he'd get the key is if he'd be willing for them to tie a rope around his waist, around the waist of the shamosh, and a rope attached to the key so that they don't lose the key. And only then would they allow him to go in on his own risk. And Baba Sali entered the outside courtyard. And the shamosh writes that when they walked up to the door, he began to tremble. He said to himself, Baba Sali's a big tzaddik, but I'm just a regular guy. He might survive this, but I wasn't cut out for this. What's going to be with me? So he turned to Baba Sali and he said to him, Harav, I don't know if I should go in. Baba Sali told him, don't worry. When you're with me, nothing can happen to you. Close your eyes, hold my jalabiyah, come in with me, and just hold on to my beged. Baba Sali opened the door. That day was a cloudy day. The Shamos says that when he walked into the room, he felt this incredible light coming onto his face. An unusual, blaring light. He said he didn't know what to make of it, but Baba Sali told him, don't look, just follow me. He says, I held on to the beged of the rabbi, and together he took a step and another step inside. He felt around, and Baba Sali walked up to the Aron Kodesh. The Aron Kodesh of the Arizal, Rabotai, open your hearts. he opened the doors of the Aron Kodesh. He opened up the Sefer Torah and he began to read from the Sefer Torah. And the Shamosh writes, every pasuk that Baba Sali read, as he read more and more pasukim, the light, the blaring fire of light began to diminish little by little by little until finally it was gone. Baba Sali tells him, you can open your eyes. It's safe now to look. The two of them turned around and walked out. There was a whole crowd of people on the outside. They heard that this great tzaddik from Morocco showed up in Tzfat and dared, with a rope around him, to go inside to a place that was uncharted and no longer available for Klal Yisrael. And here he comes walking out. There was such a cheer, such a crowd. They made Seudat Hoda'ah. Until today, when we go and visit Eretz Yisrael, we can go into the shul of the Arizal HaKadosh. We can pray because of our Baba Sali, because of this incredible tzaddik. Rabotai, listen to me. You remember the story that he told the Shamosh, close your eyes and hold on to my beged? I'm telling you tonight, close your eyes and hold on to the beged of Baba Sali. Say, Borei Olam, in the zechut of the great people we came from, in the zechut of the great Baba Sali, zchuto yagen aleinu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm lighting for you an oiled candle tonight. Leilu nishmato, Rabbi Yisrael Abehsera, Zechet Tzadik Lebracha. And I'm asking you, Borei Olam, in the zechut of the tzaddik, I'm closing my eyes, and I'm relying on you, and I'm holding his garment, and I'm asking you to walk me through this. I need help. I need help. I need a hand. I need a shidduch. I need health. I need shalom bayit. I need direction with my children. And you're going to see tonight that what we are waiting for, we could be zochetu in the zechut of the tzaddikim. Why is that? Let me tell you two quick reasons. I'm not here to take you away from the barbecue. As a rabbi, I know the last place you ever want to find yourself is between you, the people, and the food. Believe me. That's not where I want to go tonight. I want you to walk out just with this. Just with this. When you light an oiled candle for a tzaddik, in Shamayim the tzaddik notices that amongst all his magnificent accomplishments in his lifetime, there's one extra light that's burning that normally wasn't. And he says, hey, till now I had 57 billion mitzvot up here, and now I have 57 billion and one. Where did that extra little light come from? And he looks at the light and he says, somebody lit that for me. Who is that somebody? And then he looks down at you and he says, you lit that light for me, I'm going to light up your life in return. Close your eyes and hold my beged and walk through this problem with me. And he begins to be melitz yosher. You know what that means? He begins to pray up on high in front of Kisei HaKavod for us and our needs, because he has the bat phone. He has the red phone. He's able to stand in front of Borei Olam and ask for Yeshuot that might be for us sometimes years of prayers just to be able to get to. But there's another reason why tonight is so special for us. A night of Yeshuot in the zechut of Baba Sali. Dialna, listen to me well. Baba Sali wants you to know who you came from. And the way he reminds you is by us making a Hillula of what we're doing tonight. And we stand up and we say, show me, teach me, remind me of the greatness of yesteryear. Let me see the Yeshuot. Let me be zochet to greatness so that I may tell my children and grandchildren. What we need more than ever is Yeshuot for our kids today. and in the wonderful Moroccan community right here in Surfside and in the world all over. As every community, we're fighting a war over every single child because we're right before Mashiach. And our kids are going up against stuff that we would never imagine when we were growing up. They have stuff on that phone that with one button can take them to the back streets of Thailand in a second or two, and we as parents have no clue. It is scary. We don't even know ourselves what's going on behind the screens of kids, maybe even in our own homes. And we're worried, and we should be. What is going to protect our children? What's going to give them a reason to want to stand up and fight against the winds of America that's sweeping them away and we're losing them? What is going to give our kids a reason to care, to want to fight back? There's only one thing. If they feel your love and the pride of who they belong to and who they are. If you could be bigger in the love department and give them a certain self-worth and pride for who they come from and what they belong to, they'll realize that the garbage out there is beneath them. And they're worth better. And they mean better. And they could be better. That's the way we're winning the war today. We need to go back to go forward. If you can strengthen your back years of the pride of strength and family and love and give it over forward to your kid, then your children will thank you for being a part of you. If not, God forbid, I saw families that they didn't have pride from where they came from. And they did not give it down to the next generation. And their kids walked around like Parv ice cream. No, I don't like Parv ice cream either. It's tasteless. It has nothing to offer. It looks like something, but when you bite into it, you realize there's nothing there and it wasn't worth it. That's where many of our kids are holding today, because nobody gave them a reason to want to feel good enough about themselves to fight back on things they know that they shouldn't be or beneath them to do. We are a great people. We come from a great people. We come from grandparents and great-grandparents that were Ba'alei Mofet. You know what that means? I could sit up here tonight, I can tell you stories until next week about Rabbi Chaim Pinto, about the great tzaddikim, the Malach Raphael. I can tell you stories about Rabbi David Moshe. I can tell you stories about Baba Sali and all the great Abdehsera. I can tell you stories and stories and stories. What good are the stories if you're not telling them? You need to tell the stories. I used to go to my grandmother's house Friday night, not just for the food. We were done the meal Friday night at 9 o'clock. And we spent from 9 o'clock till 2 in the morning just telling stories. Do you know how much Yirat Shamayim I got from those stories? Do you know how much love and pride I got from those stories? And you know, like all our great-grandmothers, the sentence starts in Hebrew, and then mid-sentence she switches to French, and then she ends off in Arabic, and then she looks at you and says, Tanav, and you got to say, Iyeh. And then you tell her, but wait, and you go over the story again and again until you get it straight. And we start hearing amazing people that we came from. Why aren't we giving this over? Why aren't we giving this over? I know many beautiful communities in Klal Yisrael. Their pride is on culture. Their pride is on food. Their pride is on many beautiful areas. But ladies and gentlemen, you came from the Rambam. You came from the Rif. Believe it or not, the Rosh, who was the Gadol Ador of Ashkenaz, traveled to Morocco and spent his years and gave over a Torah that was pure as can be. Do you know where you came from? How come our kids are walking around with their heads like this? Our kids should be walking around with their heads in the air. They should say, do you know where I came from? Do you know who I am? Do you know what my last name is? Do you know that one time in Israel, I went to my barber. His name is Abraham El-Fassi. And right after that, I drove out with a good friend to Hedera, to a certain place which was an orphanage. The orphanage had no Torah, only secular education provided by the Israeli government. No Torah. I walked into the orphanage. I had a good friend of mine that asked me to check it out. He wanted to write out a big check, but he wanted to first hear from somebody what this place is about. I walked into the principal's office of the education department in the orphanage, and I asked him, why aren't you teaching these boys Torah? They're Jewish boys. Teach them Chumash, something. And he said to me, we don't have money. The government only gives for secular education. I said, so how much money do you need to start teaching Torah to these boys? Chumash, Mishnayot, something. Give them a pride of the education they deserve. And he said to me, I'll tell you a number, and if you can get me that money, Be'ezat Hashem, I will start teaching Torah in this orphanage. He says, but Rabbi, I want to tell you something. At that time, I wasn't a rabbi. I was a bachur. But anyone that came in to talk about Torah became a rabbi. He says, Rabbi, I want to tell you something. We have a few kollel guys that come in and they teach one-on-one to different children when we get sponsors. One-on-one chavruta. He says, I want to tell you that's working out really nice. Ladies and gentlemen, open your hearts. Just then, the door to the principal office opens while I'm standing there having this conversation. And a young boy runs in. He was about 7 years old. And he's holding a piece of paper and he screams, Me'ahuz! Me'ahuz! And I looked at him, Me'ahuz ma? He says, Ine! He says, look, I have a test. I got 100. Me'ahuz! And I looked and it was a Chumash test. I said to him, this must be one of the boys that's learning with the Havruta. He says, yes. This boy, we bring a rabbi in and they learn with him because he asked to learn Torah. A boy asks, we try to get a sponsor to bring in a Havruta. I said, wow, that's amazing. I turned to the boy and said, can I see the test? I looked at the test. It was a Chumash test. And then, I look at the top right corner of the page where the boy writes his name. His name was Chinuch El-Fassi. I looked at this boy. I said, do you know who Chinuch El-Fassi was? Do you know who that is? And he said to me, Lo. He says, Ze ani. I said, Nachon, Ze ata. I said, do you know that there was a great, great rabbi, the first of the Rishonim? His name was Rabbi Chinuch El-Fassi. He was the Rif. He was the Rebbe of the Rambam. He was the Rebbe of the Rambam's father. The Rambam used to recall and call the Rif his Rebbe as well. I said, you are a mini Rif, the Rabbi Chinuch El-Fassi, young boy in an orphanage. I turned to the rabbi and I said, let's start building our boys. They're so thirsty to want to give, to want to grow, but they need the pride. We need to bring back the pride. I don't want to touch the buttons that Chas v'Shalom would say Chas v'Shalom something wrong. The Alliance came and went. And many of us, who our grandfathers and great-grandfathers, who were Baalei Mofet, Tzadikim Mekubalim, and their children were fighting to keep Shabbat. How do you explain that? And I'll tell you how. We lost our pride and we ran to everything else. It's time to bring the pride back home. Tell your kids who you are. Tell them the families you came from. Tell them the stories that you grew up with. Tell them about your grandfathers and great-grandfathers. Tell them about the tzaddikim they came from. Tell them the stories of Baba Sali. Tell them that one day they can be the continuation of this unbelievable dynasty of Moroccan Jewry. So that Be'ezrat Hashem, the next time we do the Hillula of Baba Sali, we can have a room filled with kids that are looking to bring the beauty of the next generation with what the last generation stood for. Thank you for listening.